Yes.
Since fairly enough of
Yes,
us have
ma'am.
already joined, uh, we can start today's class. As we all can see, today's topic is crafting a masterpiece, the art of structuring your research proposal. And the speaker for today will be Dr. Sreya Maitra. She is an assistant professor in the Department of International Relations, Jadavpur University. And without further ado, we will start the class today. Ma'am, please start the class. A few of them are yet to join, but I think it's already 7:05 and we should start.
Surely.
Yes, ma'am, please.
So I'll present my PPT. Yeah. Is this visible to all of you?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Great. Thank you.
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
So
yes, ma'am.
the I'll take slightly more time today in terms of beginning with the presentation and going through it. It's slightly dense today, although I mean it's not particularly dense because I'll be just touching some heads which you will be covering in the course of the workshop. So my job again, much like yesterday, for those of you who were there yesterday, my job again today is to initiate you to the structure of writing a research proposal. You know how you basically um, start and where you basically finish. Because I often find this now more so as somebody who is supervising PhD level scholars and also MPhil level scholars. I find that this is a common concern that uh, many of you are adept at writing an abstract because you have possibly written to journals and submitted manuscripts, but you don't really know how to write a proposal. So let me start right off that the first common question that comes up is, what does the research proposal look like? So what I would ask you as a response to that is, what do you want it to look or read? How do you want it to read? Which is another way of saying that a proposal is essentially a reflection of your thoughts. Just like yesterday I was saying that your research topic should be something that deeply disturbs you, bothers you, or makes you wonder if you can contribute in any meaningful way to this topic. Similarly, when you are beginning to write the proposal, the way you write the proposal should be a clear reflection of what is going on in your mind. There's no point beating around the bush. There's no point using very heavy phrases which practically make no sense, but you are just using them because you want to sound intelligent. There is also no sense in trying to, infuse too many themes or ideas in one proposal. Because ultimately, what you have to ask yourself is, can you actually justify putting all these ideas in this one proposal? The second thing that a research proposal is not is that it is not a statement of purpose. Many of you would apply abroad or to other universities. For your if you are currently pursuing graduation, you would go for post graduation, you would go for PhD, and you are required to write an SOP in that. But a statement of purpose is not a research proposal. Okay, a statement of purpose is a very basic uh, blueprint of what is an idea that you are finding fascinating. For example, I can find the idea of the dynamics of border heart in India Bangladesh relations fascinating. I can find the idea of a new train like Vande Bharat being flagged off in India to be fascinating. And my statement of purpose would only say that I'm interested in understanding the dynamics of Vande Bharat. What is the connectivity? How was it conceptualized? Um, why was it conceptualized in this way? Who felt that there was a need for a new train, etc., etc. But a research proposal will not just say that you are interested in Vande Bharat. Okay, a research proposal will start with the issue of physical connectivity and commuting, you know, communication networks in India, and then possibly come down to the eastern region. All right. Uh, Finally, what a research proposal is not is that it is not a bio note of what only interests you. So, when I'm saying that I'm fascinated by Vande Bharat, it is not that I go on writing about how I loved trains since I was a kid, and how trains and going from one place to another with my family on holidays was the most interesting part of the year that I looked forward to. No, not a research proposal. Maybe a bio note, maybe great for an autobiography that you will write later, but not a research proposal. Fine. So, research proposal is definitely not a statement of purpose or a bio note. It is not about you, it is about the idea, but it is not a brief description of the idea, it is an extensive description of the idea and issues which are related to it on a macro level and at the micro level. This part is important, that like I said, if you are interested in one particular train, you start with the issue of what is it that physical connectivity communication network fascinates you, or why you think that that is an issue that needs to be discussed. All right. uh, so a research proposal is essentially a statement of your research interest. So mark the words your and interest in that bullet point. It is about you, so it is going to be subjective to a certain degree, like we were discussing yesterday, that in post positivist research methodology we seldom have anything in social science, any research proposal in social science which is not subjective. So it is going to be subjective because it is going to reflect your research interest. But the very word research over here basically means that you are proposing to examine an idea, analyze it, explore it, because it for you is a certain research problem. It is a research problem, not just any problem. It's a problem worthy of research. And you will try to see within the research proposal itself, you will try to see if you can possibly contribute a new thought, a new idea, or a new argument, and you can add to what is already being discussed about that particular subject, topic, or theme. So, for example, I saw discussion and numerous discussions on television. Uh, I mean, we have seen numerous discussion on television about, uh, let's say, the NEP, the National Education Policy, which has now come about, and how that is going to, permanently change the education system in India. So, if you want to say work on the national education policy from any angle, I mean, you may be from any discipline in social science, if you want to work about on it, is it enough to just talk about the NEP? Is it enough to just start with the NEP? You can start with the NEP because you can say that this is the meat of what I'm going to study. I'm going to critically examine the national education policy. But you also have to make a commentary on the education system in India as such. You have to make a commentary on the current BJP led NDA government. And you know how this is another flagship program that they have launched. And they have launched quite a few programs in the 2 terms that they have been ruling. So you bring in these angles because this is research, because this is not just a statement of purpose. You have to contextualize the topic, you have to contextualize the subject. When you are saying NEP, you are not just saying NEP. You will come to NEP, you will arrive at NEP because you will say that I am basically interested to look at how NEP is a new flagship program of the Indian education system. And I'm interested in seeing how it is going to impact the Indian education system. Right? So, some of the confusing issues that scholars face usually is that what do you call your proposal, the what you give at the headline of the proposal, if I can call it like that, the header of your proposal. Now that we are also well versed with Microsoft Word, the header, should we call it a topic? What is my research topic? Should we call it a theme? What is my research theme? What is my research subject? None of these actually. You say title. What you write at the top of your research proposal is your research title. Why? Because you are giving a name and scope to what you are about to explore and analyze. It is something specific. It can't be something as loose as a topic. A topic can be anything. Like I said, NEP is a topic, but NEP can't be your research proposal title. And it can't be something as vast as subject. So you can't put education policy as the title of your research proposal. So if I go by this same example, a possible research title could be the national education policy in India, colon, critical reflections on efficacy and issues in implementation. So at once you are saying that you are going to talk about the policy as such. You are going to link it to the national education policy. Sorry, you're going to link it to the Indian education policy, and you are specifically going to say, see how this is going to be effective, or how this is going to face issues when the policy is getting implemented in layers. So, for example, in our university, Jadavpur University, it has already got implemented. We have introduced the 4-year graduate program, right? And there will be issues. There will be many issues in implementation. So, if, for example, you want to study this, you want to see this, that at at the level of higher education, how the NEP is going to affect us, how it's going to affect the students. You can do random sampling, you can do sample surveys, you can interview professors of various universities, so on and so forth. Okay, so the title can't be a topic or a subject. A title is a title, so you have a research title. Achha, I heard a ping. Is there anyone who has raised a question or something? If you have, then kindly let me know, okay, because I'm looking at the slides and it's difficult otherwise. Okay. um this one. So, yeah. So the next part that I come to, and this is the meat of my discussion today, that there are certain basic elements of a research proposal. And many of us, when we do methodology workshops, we get lost in uh, quantitative research, qualitative research, historical analysis, hermeneutics, historical exegesis, what is the research question, what is the research hypothesis, and all that. But we basically forget to, like we have tick boxes, we basically forget how to structure the research proposal and then fill in the blanks. So, my advice to all of you would be this, that when you are writing your research proposal, when you are beginning to write your research proposal for any level, fill in these subheadings at the outset and then start writing, because then you will not miss out. So, what are those subheadings? Of course, first is the title that you have. You start with the background, then you have the scope of research, then you have literature review or review of literature. You immediately have the research gap right after that. Research gap can't be anywhere else but after the literature review, and I'll explain why. I'll go through all these subheadings. So, literature review, research gap, research hypothesis, research questions, research methodology. This order has to be exactly this. Chapterization scheme, this can be tentative. You can add the word tentative to it. Tentative chapterization scheme, proposed outcome of research. And if you are applying for scholarships, usually they ask for a timeline, because scholarship is not indefinite. So if you go for Fulbright, or if you go for Cambridge, or if you go for SILF within our Jadavpur University itself, they will ask for a proposed timeline, that in 3 years, how are you planning to finish this work? So in that case, you can give a timeline. You can also give a timeline otherwise also, even if you're not applying for a fellowship. But many people choose not to give this, and that's fine. But the others that I just mentioned, background, scope of research, literature review, research gap, research hypothesis, research questions, research methodology, chapterization scheme, and proposed outcome of research. This is the exact order in which you should have your research proposal structured. Now, if I have to put each element that I discussed under lens, what is the background? The background is a brief but relevant description of the problem that you have at hand. Okay, so it usually runs for about, let's say, 8 to 9 sentences, maybe even 10 sentences, not more than 10 sentences. Here you are trying to give the reason why you are choosing a particular topic, and you are trying to say why this subject is important to you. So, for example, going back to the NEP example, I can say that I can start by saying um, that India met with a new landmark in its education system when the national education policy was launched and put into implementation in higher education, not primary. I'm saying higher education, in higher education in institutions across India. Uh, this has been a new education policy which has come possibly since I mean, India has not seen such a landmark policy in the last 20 years. One movement which was made in education was about digital learning, Swayam and MOOC, which was launched uh, just before COVID, or a little before that, if I'm not wrong. And you have the relevance of the digital learning gaining ground during COVID, and now you have the national education policy, which is trying to change the basic framework of curricula of higher education as well as primary education. But then this work will look into higher education specifically, and this is relevant because as the initial feedback has shown, there are likely to be several challenges that that the government will face when it is implementing this policy. So this is your background. You are contextualizing the idea, and you're not saying that this idea is the standalone idea. Nothing has come before, nothing has come after. You are talking about something, some predecessor preceding uh, idea which has come before this, like I said, the Swayam, the MOOC, the digital learning experience. But you are saying that this is a flagship program, and that is why it needs to be examined. Its relevance for years to come needs to be studied. Okay, then you have the so what you have in the background, therefore, is a balanced combination of the historical context and contemporary thoughts. You raise why the issue is pertinent for society. You talk about why, what are the prevailing notions regarding the issue in existing literature. You just briefly touch upon them, and you give a few. Uh, these examples are actually why I have written examples on the slide, is because I thought that if you can come up with some examples of your own, but I guess we can do that at the end of the presentation. So, I mean, my idea was that, if you all could give me an example, and we could try to put it in the structure of a research title, and try to see if we can arrive at a background. um, then you come to the scope of research. Now, the first question we say is, how is the scope different from background? You've already contextualized the problem in the background. What new there is to talk about in the scope? No, the scope is different because now you are not talking about the problem in general. Now you are talking about the scope of your study, what you are going to study and what you are not going to study. For example, when you read books and articles, you will see many a time the author uses the phrase like, it is beyond the scope of this work. So, for example, if I'm writing about abrogation of Article 370 of Kashmir, I might say that how the special status of Kashmir was eroded over a period of time historically is beyond the scope of this article. That means I'm not going to go into those details of 60s and 70s and 80s when Kashmir was, relatively autonomous or had limited autonomy, but gradually that was being taken away from them. I'm not going to go into that history. I am going to only talk about Article 370 and its abrogation that happened in 2019. Do you understand what I'm saying? So in the scope, you put down what you are going to do, and you are basically saying that there are many other ways of looking at this problem, many issues which are related to this problem, but I am not going to do all of that in my work. So again, for example, if I had to take the example that I used yesterday, the case of IDPs and development induced displacement compensation and resettlement. If you are interested in only studying compensation and resettlement claims of people who have been displaced, you say in the scope that I want to study how some people who have been displaced internally have not received their compensation, or it has not been just compensation. It has been inadequate compensation. And in that case, my work will not really look into the plight of refugees or the plight of those internally displaced persons who have had to shift locations because of natural disasters. You see, so immediately you put that in the scope. In the background, you will possibly say that why internally displaced, internal displacement is a major problem, and how it turns citizens into powerless beings. From being empowered citizens, they become powerless beings, without a home and without a shelter. So you're talking about IDPs in general, but in the scope you talk specifically about IDPs due to development induced displacement, development projects like, say, a project by Coal India, a project by POSCO like we saw in Orissa. And then you say that I am worried not about how they are displaced, I'm worried about how they don't get compensation after they are displaced, years after they are displaced. So in the scope we talk about how we want to examine the issue, and now, and not how it has already been examined. You don't give a reflection of what are the different works or what are the different angles, theoretical angles or academic angles, which have come about on this issue. You just say what you want to do in the scope, and we point out the areas which do not have satisfactory answers or contain the potential for further research. So you say that when I study about compensation and resettlement issues of IDPs, I find that enough has not already been done. Or let's say if I talk about the NEP example, I can always say that the NEP is such a contemporary issue that systematic academic engagement with the policy of the NEP or the NEP, as such, the problems in the policy, the problems in implementation. There has been no systematic engagement with this at all. So I hope that my work will be a first or contribute comprehensively on that front. Okay, and then we come to literature review, where now you go into the related fields. So now you go into what you have studied on the issue that you want to do research on, and this is, believe me, very important. uh, I know this for sure that when a PhD dissertation or an MPhil dissertation goes to an examiner, or even a journal paper, it goes to an examiner, the first thing the person sees is citations, the section on literature review, because that immediately orients the reader to how much you have already explored the prevailing notions and ideas regarding the subject. So if I am doing work on the NEP and I have not read the policy, the policy document which is available everywhere, then I have failed the research topic entirely, because that was my first job. If I want to work on NEP, I need to study the policy first. So NEP should be there in my reference. NEP should be there in my literature review. All right. It is important to explore themes and ideas which are related to the topic. So again, like I said, you have to look into India's education system, primary education, higher education, what have been the problems in higher education, what has been the levels of literacy, what has been the levels of school dropouts who have not reached higher education as such, what are the different government projects which run to encourage higher education in India, and then you come to the national education policy. And believe me, there are books and articles on everything. You may think that you are doing something very path breaking, and you may be doing something very path breaking, but you are bound to find some blog, some article, some book, some journal, some magazine, where your idea has already been thrashed out once by one or more than one scholars. So it is important. Literature review section is important for two reasons. One, for the reader to know that you know of the literature that exists on this topic. You know the major authors, you know the major books, you know the major articles, you know the major newspaper opinions which have come out on this. And the second thing why it's important is that if you have actually gone through this literature and if you summarize that literature in this section, in literature review, you basically summarize the arguments of the prevalent literature, then actually that gives you a very good direction to what you want to say. Okay. So, for example, again, if I go back to the IDP's example, because this is something that I did myself, my PhD dissertation was way too vast for me to discuss over here. So, I'll stick to the IDP's example. When I was reading about, internally displaced persons, and I was reading the major works, as I was summarizing the literature, as I was reading through the literature, and I read a, a whole gamut of literature, right from, who are the IDPs, uh, the definition by the conventions, the international conventions. You have international, cases which are solved in the International Court of Justice, although IDPs is an internal matter. You have, debates between countries, where one country has accused the other country of not looking after internally displaced persons, and the second country saying that this is an internal matter, please stay out of it. Two issues like how the principle of eminent domain, that is a principle by which the government of any country, or rather the government of our country, can take up unused land or land which has been in use but which the government feels can be better used for something else. That is the principle of eminent domain. So how this principle of eminent domain has been used and misused in India, through different regimes, I read up everything. And because I read all that, I realized that the specific dynamics that I want to actually study is, it's not that compensation and resettlement clauses are not there, or there are no laws about compensation and resettlement. What has happened is that the issue of compensation has got diluted over a period of time because of the changing laws. So there is no proper definition of what should be the compensation that must be offered to an IDP in a development project. You understand? So that is precisely what I want to study. And I understood that, I arrived at that because I went through all this literature and I kept on summarizing this. And by summarizing articles, I found that this is the part that is attracting me the most, and this is the part that I want to do my research on. So then I sharpened my research question and my hypothesis, and I brought it down to the issue of compensation and resettlement, and how historically these have been left ambiguous to help development project owners to offer whatever they can offer at that time to an IDP. Okay. Uh, so, in the literature review, a rough estimate of the specifics, if I have to give you, a minimum of 6 to 7 books should be there, and this is for a PhD proposal. You should quote at least 4 to 5 journal articles. You should read at least 3 to 4 newspaper reports or opinion pieces, which we call op-eds, and you should cite them in the work. Some reflections of some primary documents like a government white paper or a gazette notification, like the NEP example. The NEP will be a government white paper, right? Maybe some manuscripts, like some rare manuscripts. For example, again going back to Kashmir, if I use the instrument of accession 1947, uh, that is a white paper, or that is, let's say, a manuscript. Other government notices which come about, something that is being published in the websites of the ministries, the different ministries, these can also be there in the literature review. It helps enriching the literature review. So ultimately the literature review should be a balanced reflection of both secondary and primary sources. This is the ideal literature review that you can get. And based on what you read or what you don't read in the literature, what you can't find in the literature, you arrive at the research gap. So the research gap basically starts off with what, according to you, the current literature does not contain satisfactorily, or there is further scope for exploration. So again, if I go back to the IDP example, to my mind, the issue of compensation has not been interrogated thoroughly in academics, and this is there are not enough articles or books on this issue that compensation has been left ambiguous. So this is what I want to work on. That's your research. uh, it can also be something like, if I want to theorize the national education policy by linking it to India's orientation towards education as such, that you want to make it more and more relaxed, you want to make it more and more available. I mean, I can also make a contrast in the context of the NEP. I can make a contrast or a comparative study between how the education system is in the United States and how it is in India. We are actually going towards that model, which is followed in the US. In any case, we are trying to go towards that, but a crucial difference is that in US, higher education comes with a price, whereas over here it's very nominal. Fee is very nominal unless you're going for private institutions. So public education in higher educational institution in India is still nominal, whereas abroad, unless you are studying in a community college, it's actually quite expensive. So I can also do a study like that, and in that case my research gap would be that, if I don't find that anybody has analyzed the NEP, somebody has said that okay, the NEP is actually trying to emulate the American model and it's trying to move towards the American model, but are we the same economically? We are not. USA is a far more developed country. It's a far more economically far more strong. It's a stronger country. So if we can't see all that, if we don't have too much literature on that, then that's my literature research gap. That's what I want to study. So raising the research gap is very crucial because it essentially is justifying and defending your work. What is your contribution? What is it that you are doing which has not been done before? So again, if I have to give some random examples, research gap can usually be around issues like absence of theorization, that there is no theorization on this issue. For example, for my PhD dissertation, when I was working on internal conflicts in India and Sri Lanka, I found that the conflicts have been studied separately, but the conflicts have not been studied together. Number one, even though these are just two countries that I'm talking about, there has been no comparative study, and there is an absence of theorization. There is no theorization of the conflict. And this is again something that you can use. I mean, when you are studying something which has been talked about a lot, say India Bangladesh relations, the trade that they do, change in government, how that affects India's relationship with Bangladesh, etc., etc. Somebody might say that, oh, okay, then I shouldn't do this topic because this has been done so much. No, you can still do it. You can still find out why there is no systematic work on, how the youth in Bangladesh have got radicalized, or why India officially refused asylum to the Rohingyas. The Rohingya issue can be another issue that you can study systematically. You understand? So there are often absence of categories or explanations, and you can introduce those categories and explanations and say that this is the research gap that I find. That the topic has been discussed, the subject has been discussed, but it has not been discussed in a way that a uniform category comes up. We don't have uniform explanations. We don't have theorizations. Or you can say that new questions are not being raised on this, which will be relevant for our contemporary times. For example, why does a country refuse asylum? Can there be a generic answer to this, or is it always country specific? That can be your research topic. So, if I say that in South Asia, which are the countries which have refused asylum to refugees and why? And I make a comparative study. That can be your research topic. Okay. Um, So, absence of critiques could also be a very viable research gap. This is another thing which is very relevant for many kinds of work. That nowadays we find a lot of descriptions and narrations. Like I was telling you yesterday, there is exploratory research. There is even theoretical research, but we don't have critical theory that's coming in. We don't have critiques. So, for example, a research can give you in detail about the national education policy, but there may not be any critique on the national education policy, and that may be my work. But I want to criticize it. I don't think it was needed at all, and I don't think that it is beneficial for a an almost poor country, agro-based economy like India's. So absence of critique can also be a way you can chart out your research. And then you come to the most crucial part of your research proposal, which is the hypothesis. Now, many people are often confused about what is the hypothesis. I was an internal advisor to a PhD scholar who has already done PhD for the past 1 year. And when I asked her that what is your research hypothesis, she was like, "What is the hypothesis?" And I said, "I don't know, you tell me." And she said, "No, no, what is hypothesis? I don't know what's hypothesis." So I don't know whether to be alarmed by that or just be amused by that. But my point is that when you start out as a researcher, and the benefit of volunteering to do these workshops is that you should have a very clear idea of what these subheadings actually mean. A research hypothesis, as I have put out for you over here in the slide, is it's a statement of the problem which subsumes an expectation and prediction. So, for example, for your um, for my presentation yesterday, I got a feedback, where there is a pie chart about how it was highly likely, extremely likely that you will use the inputs that I gave in your research. uh, and I found that the categories which were there were highly effective, moderately effective, extremely effective, etc., etc. And I thought that, wow, this is good quantitative work. That there has been a PPT, there has been a presentation, and it has immediately got mapped statistically about how many people felt that it was extremely likely that they will use the inputs in their own research. How many of you felt that it was moderately likely, etc. But what then came to my mind is that what I was trying to tell you yesterday, and what I will again mention over here when I talk about your hypothesis, when you say extremely effective, highly effective, moderately effective, how do you define the word effective? I'm sure if there are, 20 of you over here, all 20 of you will define the word effective differently. So, my point is that when you are charting out your research hypothesis, you must have a good sense of a good qualitative understanding of what you want to do. So your expectation will be a qualitative expectation. Your prediction will be a qualitative expectation, a qualitative prediction, even if your work is statistical. So your hypothesis is something that covers the entire scope of your research. It should not be, the style of your hypothesis shouldn't be interrogative. It shouldn't have question marks, because that is the job of the research questions. Okay, there can be speculations, but there can never be conjectures in your hypothesis. It shouldn't be unfounded speculations. They should be well-founded speculations. It shouldn't just be that you're assuming something which is purely biased in nature. So you should avoid phrases like "it's unfortunate that," or "it is good to see that," or "it is likely that," or you should use words like "this is likely to be a certain way," or "trends show that something is going to happen." So, for example, for the NEP research proposal, you can say that the your hypothesis can be the immediate feedback upon the launch of the NEP reveals that there can be challenges in implementation. So that's your first hypothesis. Okay, or you can even begin a little further back by saying that the national education policy has been a landmark in education policy in India. Okay, so this is factually correct, and the moment you use the word landmark, you are qualitatively qualifying it. You are saying that it's a positive move. Okay, or you're saying that it is a leap forward. It has taken the discussion forward. Fine. And then you have Oh, one very important thing that I forgot to tell you is that a research hypothesis should ideally have 4 to 5 sentences, statements. Okay, so say again for the NEP example, depending on what you want to work on, you can start with the national education policy being a landmark. You can say that the immediate feedback shows that there can be challenges in implementation. Number three, you can say that educational institutions in India are structurally impaired and do not have the capacity to, radically implement the national education policy. Number four can be that the policy making has to be complemented with expansion of capacities in educational institutions in India, like that. Okay, so that's your hypothesis. And the research questions should be, again, they must be related to the hypothesis. They should flow immediately from the hypothesis. So if you say that the NEP is a landmark in the national education policy of India, your research question will be, will the national education policy be helpful for bringing qualitative improvement in India's educational scenario? You have a hypothesis, you have a question. The hypothesis is factually correct, the question is well placed, and it is giving this qualitative sense that it is critiquing or is likely to critique the national education policy. Or at least you're saying that the jury is out there. Just because the NEP has been implemented doesn't mean that we should all be happy about it. We have to see what are the challenges in implementation that are yet to come. So, short, succinct questions which convey the most pertinent observations as well as your queries, because those queries are what will form your dissertation, and they should logically and argumentatively flow from the research hypothesis. If you have 5 research hypotheses, you should have 5 research questions. There should be parity. Okay. Again, I had thought of discussing a few examples with you. Maybe we'll come to that at the end. And then you have research methodology, uh, which again, I mean, the speakers who will speak after me in the days to come will thrash out all the details of how your research methodology should be designed and qualified. What I can tell you over here is that, like I was discussing yesterday, there's quantitative research and there is qualitative research. Usually, if it's a balanced reflection of quantitative work and qualitative work, that's then you have a winner at hand. It should also be a balanced reflection of primary and secondary sources. So, like I said, when you are doing quantitative work, you can, when you are interviewing uh, professors in different universities and asking them, what they feel about the NEP, and you are then charting those responses in a pie chart, or on a Likert scale or whatever, you are basically making qualitative opinions into a quantitative statistics. So that's your quantitative work. And when you are studying the national education policy and finding out loopholes in that, or seeing that no, this was actually quite well timed and this is good for the future generations of the country, that's your qualitative work. When you are reading the policy document NEP, that's a primary source. When you are reading articles which have come out after the NEP got implemented, those are the secondary sources. Okay, and your job as a researcher would be to find out the exact methods which will help you complete the research work to the best of your ability, so that you have no stone that you have left unturned. There can't be any question that can be asked on the basis of your dissertation which comes to your mind which you have not answered. Somebody else will come up with some question or the other, sure. Your examiner will ask you so many questions when you sit for the viva, but that's a different point. You should feel that you have done thorough work. Okay. And then you finally have the proposed chapterization scheme. Usually, these should be linked with your hypotheses and your research questions. So, 5 hypotheses, 5 research questions, 5 chapters. Chapter titles should be short and apt. They should explain the scope of what is being discussed. They shouldn't sound like catchy titles of journalistic writing. Uh, they should be like chapter one can be locating the theoretical framework of something, or it can be historical analysis of so and so. Um, and each chapter, the title should be such that each chapter should pave the way for the next. So even if you are doing case studies, or comparative case studies, you first have to have a contextualization of your work, which should ideally be theoretical, and then you go to the the summary of the observations that you have made on the basis of that topic, so say the education policy in India as such, and then you make way for the the case studies in your chapters. So ideal to have 5 chapters apart from introduction and conclusion. Some people even have 5 chapters including introduction and conclusion. So introduction, 3 chapters, and conclusion, and you're through. All right, depends from proposal to proposal. And then you have the proposed outcome, like what you think you can achieve with your work, how you think your work will contribute to the current debate or the current literature on a particular topic. And the timeline, like I said, this is optional, but many people choose to use it. The timeline will be how you intend to write each chapter or balance your writing with your field work. So for example, if I am going to a field, will I continuously write during that time also? Will I be writing my theoretical chapter when I'm visiting a field? No, that's a very wrong approach. Your timeline should be divided, where you dedicate, say in case of a PhD, you dedicate first 6 months to just studying. So first 6 months should be literature review. And you say that this will be over and above the literature that I have already reviewed in my proposal. If I have studied 6 to 10 books for my proposal, I am going to study 20 more for my dissertation, right? And then I basically start with summarizing the arguments in the books, and then I start compiling them. So maybe in the next 6 months I write the first theoretical chapter, which has the literature review and which has a theoretical background or a structural formatting of my work. And then I go to my field, do my ethnographic research or my case study, or I start interviewing people or gathering quantitative data, statistical data, and then I start introducing that in my. All right, so you go step by step, you don't mix your chapters. So the final question is there an ideal research proposal? No, there isn't. But your proposal should be something which is topical. It should be socially relevant, because in social science, if we do something which is not socially relevant, then usually people are like, what are you doing? It should use the dominant literature that is existing, and it should use your individual field experiences. There should be a proper, well crafted research design, and there should be a distinct normative or empirical value to your work, or there should be both. So, a post positivist trend of research is right now considered to be the ideal. And that's that. So, thank you very much, and I would love to answer any queries that you may have. Ma'am, if you can please show the slides of backgrounds of research proposals once again. Okay. The background. Okay, sure. Yes, 1 second, please. I will go back to the back. Yeah, that's the background. Can you see it? I hope you can see it. And that's the scope. Okay. Okay. How long should a literature review be? A literature review should ideally be, so if you are talking about word limit, I can say that literature review should be about 2,500 to 3,000 words, not less than that for sure. It can be more, it can go up to 5,000 words. Yes, Orithro Moithro has raised a hand. Please tell me.
Uh, yes, ma'am. It's a minor point. I just wanted to clarify something. During our lecture, you mentioned that research proposal needs to contain a part about why the specific area of research is of interest to me. And I just wanted to clarify. You also mentioned why that that type of research has social value. So, are you distinguishing between them? Like, do I need to specifically mention why I find this interesting, or mentioning why this research has a societal value enough.
Okay, when you go to an interview and you are asked that are you fit for a job, do you say yes, I think I'm fit for a job because I think I'm fit for a job, or do you say that look at my CV, look at how brilliant I am, of course I'm fit for the job? So your CV is, sort of corroborating your brilliance uh, in writing, right? So when you say that you feel that a particular topic is socially relevant, or you feel that a particular topic needs to be examined more thoroughly, you substantiate that by highlighting the relevance of the issue, the the let's say what the kind of problems it raises if it is not solved, and then you say that this is of particular interest to me. So when we were discussing safe drinking water yesterday, or even the example that I gave you today, the national education policy, when you say why you are, of course you will not talk about yourself in first person, you will talk about yourself in third person in the research proposals, but you can say that education is not literacy. Education is much more than literacy. It is a tool of empowerment, and in a developing country like India, which has great ambitions, an educated literate population is going to be the social cultural capital which the country will bank on. So the relevance of the national education policy and the contributions that it can make to India's education needs to be critically examined. That's your justification.
All right, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Harshvardhan says, hello, ma'am. Can you please throw light on the research hypothesis, especially in the context of exploratory research and how it can be formulated? So, can you give me an example? Otherwise, I'll keep talking about NEP. Tell me, give me another example, and then we can trash out a research hypothesis. Ma'am, is there any ideal length of the research gap? There is ideal length of the research gap should be about a para. So again, maybe 10 sentences. What is the length of the research proposal? The length of the research proposal entirely um, should be about, when I mean back in our days, it used to be about 5,000 words, because your literature review itself will be more than 2,000 words. So the rest, everything put together, it's about 5,000 words. Yes, whoever is raising hands, just I mean one by one, please just talk. Shuvecha Shaha. Yes.
Ma'am, first, ma'am, am I audible?
Yes, you are. Please continue.
First, I want to thank you because the entire lecture was really enlightening.
Thank you so much.
So, I had a number of questions. The first one is where is the place of research objectives?
You don't need to have a research objective if you are giving your hypothesis and your research question. Thank you for saying this. I find this a lot in many of the proposal nowadays. A statement of purpose requires a research objective. A research proposal does not require a research objective. Your background, your scope of work or your scope of study, followed by literature review, research gap, and hypothesis, that's you're stating the objective in any case over there. That's your objective. Statement of purposes ideally have research objectives, where you are talking about why you are doing the research. All right. And
Uh,
in your research proposal, when you are talking about the proposed outcome, then you are talking about the contribution of your research. So this is the structure to follow. But people have now confused it because they apply abroad and they write the statement of purpose and then they bring in the research objective to a research proposal. Huh.
Ma'am, um, sometimes I think it happens. There are repetitions like in case of research scope and
Yes.
research gap. When we'll write research about research scope, then we have to also write about what others haven't talked about on this specific area. So this is like research gap. So there will be some repetition, right?
No. When you write the scope of the study and you mention, a few issues which may not have been covered, you are talking about those issues ideationally, conceptually. But when you are writing the research gap, that is following directly from the literature review, and that basically means that from the literature that you have surveyed, you have not found a systematic interrogation of certain issues. So then your research gap is saying that the dominant existing literature does not cover these issues or does not cover these issues satisfactorily. But in the scope of study, you are saying why your work is going to be unique. So that's a very different way of elaborating on what has not been done. You understand?
Yeah, sure, ma'am. Ma'am, what if the area is quite new and you mentioned that we need to have at least 4 or 5 articles in the literature review section. But what if there are not that many articles available?
Well, if you don't have four or five, then you should rethink your work in any case, because if the issue is not based on or not rooted in any current literature, then conducting your work in itself is going to be purely based on primary data, and that can be difficult. Basing an entire dissertation on primary data can lead to a lot of hassles later on. I mean, and I'm saying this solely for PhD or MPhil dissertations. I mean, of course, MPhil is now out of the way, but for PhD dissertations, it is feasible that you find literature which somewhat relates to what you are going to write. For example, if again, like if I come back to the NEP example, or let's say if I want to talk about why India suddenly took to OTT in during the COVID pandemic, and if you tell me that there's not enough which is being written on OTT in India, so what do I study? I will say talk about digital divide. Read up about digital divide, and find out how many people have access to OTT, or how many people have now bought smartphones because they want to access whatever, an Amazon Prime or Hoichoi or whatever. So my submission to you will be, find related issues and base your literature review on that. But don't think that your work is rootless. Not having literature review or not having enough literature basically means your work is rootless. Then that's your supervisor himself or herself will discourage you from doing such work. So you have to find related fields, which you can link your subject with, and then you will come down to the subject. That's fine.
Ma'am, the yesterday I asked you whether we have to mention in terms what type of methodology we're using, and you told me to come back with that today.
Yes. What was the question? Whether we can use paradigm and ontology and epistemology? That one.
No, my question is whether we have to mention in terms what type of methodology we are using, like
Oh
whether we are
yeah, yeah,
using.
yeah, 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 yeah. I remember that. Yeah. So of course you have to talk about in the research methodology section. You have to very clearly state whether your work is going to be quantitative or qualitative, and whether you are what kind of quantitative or qualitative tools you're going to use. So, for example, if you say that your work is going to be quantitative, you have to say what kind of statistical analysis you're going to use, or whether you are going to use surveys, whether you are going to use feedback, whether you are going to collect data through other mechanisms. And if you say you're going to use qualitative methodology, then you have to say whether it's going to be exploratory, whether you are going to be whether you are going to undertake an investigative kind of research, whether you will use a historical narrative, whether your work will include a comparative study, whether it will include a case study, and then you then say in the methodology section also whether your what kinds of primary and secondary data your work is going to use. So you specify qualitative or quantitative or both, and then you specify what kind of primary data, what kind of secondary data that you're planning on using. So this methodology section is dedicating to clarifying, whatever you're going to use to conduct your research, write your dissertation, you're going to state that right out at the methodology section.
Thank you, ma'am. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you. Study of everyday life of members of a religious tradition like Ramakrishna tradition or Arya Samaj. What was the question? I'm sorry. Can you throw more light on. Okay, so you want me to basically carve out a research hypothesis on this? Harshvardhan, can I hear your
Yes,
voice?
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I plan to study the Ramakrishna Mission, the members of the Ramakrishna Mission, and RS Samaj in a comparative framework. But I'm struggling about hypothesis. Like, how should I draw hypothesis? Because it's mostly an
That's a wonderful
exploratory
topic.
research.
Right, that's a wonderful topic. So here your hypothesis could be, and I'm saying this right off. I mean, you will of course just discuss this with your supervisor, but just to give you a sense of what a hypothesis is, you can basically say that the personality profiling of members who are um, what is the term? They are not employed. They are more like part organization part. Okay, so you can say that if I just write it out here, that the profiling of members of religious organizations like Ramakrishna Mission and Arya Samaj is pertinent um, is a pertinent uh, project or is a pertinent issue for understanding the internal dynamics and operations of these organizations. This is one. The second will be the internal uh, or let's say the historical accounts of these organizations does not take into account the impact of personalities on decision making. The everyday lives of the members of the organizations is um, is rigorous and demands thorough understanding to gauge their psychological orientation and to the institution. Do you understand? So you have
Yes,
three
ma'am.
hypotheses right here,
Yeah.
right? And the last two can be depending on what you want to study. I mean, I understand that you're studying their everyday lives, but what is your exact question? I mean, are you trying to just see? I mean, like you said, it's an exploratory research. So are you just trying to do the profiling? You know what they do and etc. etc.
No, I mean, I'm looking at sacred space, the concept of sacred space,
So
sacred
then,
time, and
great.
these
So
are
you
just
can
initial.
right, right. I understand. So you
What
can
is
you can bring in their commitment to social service, their idea of the sacred space in the
Mhm.
last two of your hypothesis. You understand? So this is how you can begin your hypothesis, and then your research questions would be related to this. So you can say that are the internal how much are the internal dynamics of these organizations impacted by these specific personality types of the members? Okay, or how
No.
is there? Yeah, tell me, please tell me.
Now I just have like one query. Like research hypothesis, can it change after like say I have done my field work and I like arrive at some different result than what I was expecting. So can it change by the end of the research?
Yes, it can. I mean, you can, of course, you can write in your chapter that this was the hypothesis that I had started with, but I
Okay.
found that this hypothesis is not valid. So there is an interrogation which you do in the conclusion of your dissertation. And usually
Okay.
if you go against your own hypothesis, it's called a null hypothesis. So you can of course do that.
Hmm.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, man. Thanks
Thank
a lot.
you.
Good
Thank you.
evening, ma'am.
Good evening. Please tell me.
Ma'am, my question is from yesterday's session.
Yes.
Yesterday, you taught about post-positivist research and analysis. My
Yes.
question is that how is it different from anti-positivist research, and in which cases can we apply it, or how do we understand in which cases those lenses are appropriate?
uh, are you trying to do some work relating to anti-positivism?
No, ma'am. I am just trying to get an idea about it.
Okay, so you see.
I have not thought about anything specific.
Okay, so you see, when you are, when I mean, in the course of my lectures yesterday and today, when I told you that an ideal proposal is there's no ideal proposal, but if you have a balanced reflection of a normative value and an empirical value, I am in the post positivist realm, where I am not discrediting quantitative analysis. I am not discrediting the value of empirics, but I'm saying that you should have a normative value also. There should be an analysis, and it is fine that if that analysis is subjective and not entirely based on data. Okay, but if I am an anti-positivist, then I would essentially say that no, we are students of social science, and no chart, no pie chart, no survey should be used in social science research, because these were invented by students of natural sciences, and whatever is done in natural sciences should not be done in social sciences. So that's anti-positivism. So if you take that stance, my advice to you would be you should mention that right out in your work. For example, there are many, I was mentioning this to you yesterday, there are many works which are purely theoretical. But even those works don't claim that they are anti-positivist. They just simply say that this work is going to be theoretical, it's going to use hermeneutics, historical exegeses, and it is not going to particularly engage with any kind of quantitative analysis. But to say that I'm anti-positivist, you have to then clarify as to why and how your work does not merit any uh, quantitative data. You'll have to justify that then.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Um, Shayantan Bandyopadhyay, please tell me.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, thank you for the wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
Um, yes, ma'am. Ma'am, the question which I want to ask is about hypothesis. You gave us three examples, but I'm saying that all the hypotheses have one dependent variable and independent variable and the relation between them. So, is
Yes.
this the general rule of hypothesis?
No, not at all. Uh, for example, I mean, it is dependent variables and independent variables in research are usually implied in social science research. And you don't really need to specify it always. In social science, we seldom specify what is dependable and what is independent, what is dependent and what is independent variable. So when I am, for example, going through these hypotheses, I would say that over here, the religious organizations would be the independent variable, that I am studying that no matter what.
Hmm.
The profiling of members is the dependent variable. So as long as I'm studying how the members interact or how the members get oriented to the value system of the social organization, I'm profiling them. So that's the dependent variable. Doesn't mean that I have to, specify that right out. In
Okay,
social
ma'am.
science, many people don't do that. Many people do that. Many people don't do that. The problem of doing that is that you have to maintain that right up to the end.
Okay,
At
ma'am.
some point in this study, for example, it might so happen that the members and their psychological orientation may become the independent variable. You may uh,
Hmm.
you may construe your entire study around how they are reacting and responding to the organization depending on that commitment that they have built through rigorous training. So
Hmm.
if I make that the independent variable, then I might say that they will always be, in favor, and they will always be loyal. Then it'll,
Hmm.
it can become like an RSS, where you will
Hmm.
never speak against. You understand what I'm saying? So for example, if I want to
Hmm.
infuse the RSS into this, it'll become,
Hmm.
the entire dynamics will change. But
Hmm.
if I say that the religious organizations are the independent variable, I can defend that right till the end.
Okay,
Right?
ma'am.
Yeah.
Yeah, ma'am, just two more questions for ma'am. What is do we need to specify the rationale of the work in the research proposal? What will the utility of the entire research? And
That
the
is your
second,
proposed outcome. That is your
oh, the,
proposed outcome of
oh, that is a
research, where
proposed
you defend
outcome.
the work, you give the rationale, and you say why you are doing it and how it's going to benefit the literature and the work and the subject as such.
And ma'am, last question is that ma'am, you are telling the ideal length of the research proposal is 5,000 words. So
Yes.
when you are in the interview board facing the for a PhD interview, for getting admission to PhD interview, is this possible for the research board to read the 5,000 word proposal?
No, but they will
No.
go through your literature review in detail, and they will go through your research questions and your research hypothesis. See, it's fine to have a research proposal of 2 pages, thinking that this is going to benefit the board members to go through a quick, to give it a quick glance. But even if you hand them 15 pages, they will go through that and they will pick out the most important parts and then ask you on that. And if you have done shabby work, it will be difficult to defend your work. But yes, having said that, I also say that uh, for a PhD interview, maybe you don't need to write a 5,000 word proposal. But when you are submitting a research proposal to begin your research work, uh, which gets filed and which gets taken up by your Viva examiner also, it's best to have a 5,000 word uh,
Thank you,
proposal.
ma'am. I got your point.
Yeah.
Ma'am, I have another
Good evening,
question.
ma'am. Uh,
Yes. Good evening.
can I ask, since I'm waiting for very long,
Yes.
excuse me? Yeah, ma'am. Um, I have a little bit doubt here right now, since I already submitted my research proposal, and my research proposal has been, accepted by the external members. So, in my research, what happened? I did not, wrote about any research question. Yes, there is mentioning of a hypothesis, research hypothesis, and statement of problem. So, but then also my research proposal has been accepted. So, ma'am,
For what?
how,
Accepted for
yeah,
what?
accepted for PhD. This one,
That's wonderful.
I
But do
already.
you think that that's the proposal that's going to go in your file? It's not. That's the proposal.
Oh,
It's almost like it's something that supported you during your interview. But when your
okay,
PhD work will actually start under the tutelage of your supervisor, you will need to
okay.
write a proper proposal which can be filed.
Okay. So, ma'am, my question is that if I'm writing like has a section like statement of problem, and there I mention all the problem, whatever the statement was there based on my topic. So, is there necessary that I have to also mention about the scope of um, research, scope of my research,
It is the
area of
standard
research?
format. Yes, you should. Because, like I said,
Okay.
what you have is not a statement of purpose. A statement of
Okay.
purpose has a statement of problem and research objective, but what you have is a research
Okay.
proposal. If this doesn't come up
Okay.
during the 5 years of your work, your Viva examiner is sure to bring it up later on.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay,
Ma'am, I
Titoshan.
have a
Yeah,
question.
Shashatodosh. Yes, please tell me.
Ma'am, in which cases interpretive methodology is useful
Give me a
in
case and I'll
social
tell you if
science?
it's useful or not.
Yes, ma'am.
Give me a case and then I can tell you if it's useful or not.
Ma'am,
Do you have something in mind?
if we want to add certain techniques like uh, Rollebart's semiotics or Michel Foucault's interpretive approach, then
Yes.
in which cases it can be useful, and uh, if I
Well,
don't have a very clear idea, but if you can give some examples,
see,
it would be really helpful.
no, see, ideally, interpretive research is best used when you are examining a concept and not examining a fact. That is the best that I can put it. I mean, if you are again going by yesterday's example, if you are talking about development, you can surely use interpretive research because you will come up with multiple interpretations, and then you will have your own interpretation of it. So basically, to put this forward, that there can be no one understanding of development, there can be no objective understanding of development, this kind of interpretive research would be good. But again, if you are working on human development index and you are trying to say that the human development index is what a country should follow in order to assess its performance as far as the human development goals are concerned, then interpretive research will not be viable, because human development index is a fact. I mean, you will just get a bunch of data in there, and you will not be able to explore concepts like you can explore economic inequality, but you can't explore the dynamics of poverty. You can explore progress, but you can't explore the concept of empowerment. So interpretive research is best for concepts, when you are interrogating concepts and ideologies.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay.
Ma'am, can I
TK.
ask? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, please.
So my question is regarding the literature review. While writing the summary, which
Tito, do I know you from somewhere? I mean, are you a current
y-
student, or do I know you from somewhere else?
no, you know me from Maulana Azad College.
Right,
So
I thought so. Right, right, right.
yeah,
How are you?
this is yeah, I'm fine. This is like nostalgic. Getting nostalgic, right?
So good to see
So
you. Thank you. Yeah,
yeah.
tell me. Tell me. Please tell
So
me.
while writing the literature review, I mean, should the summary be like what should be the form of the summary? Should it be like writing X article then the summary, or like should it be
Hmm.
thematic? I mean, X argument and that article talks about it. I mean, what should be the form of it?
That's a very good question. It should actually ideally be thematic, but you can also go chronologically. Like you can arrange the works that you have found in a temporal line. Like you can use a timeline, and you can work on the articles or the research materials that came out, say from 1980s, 90s, 2000, 2001, 2002, like that. Or you can go thematically, where you interrogate the major leaps in a work. So for example, in this if I'm talking about development, you talk about how the idea of development was started, how it was initially only in the domain of economics, and then it became more about social science taking up the issue of development, and then it was about modernization, equality, periphery, and mainstream and periphery. Then there was the issue of ecological development. Then there was human development. So you arrange them in a particular theme. So in this case, of course, the example that I just gave you, this is both in a timeline as well as thematic. But there could be other issues, where you don't really follow a timeline, but you just use the issues that you want to highlight, or the issues which you feel are related to the scope of your work, and you talk about the literature that you have found on that. So again, for example, if I have to go back to my own PhD, when I was working on internal conflicts, so I divided the literature review into two parts, right? So one which was about how the state handles internal security, and there, the bunch of works that I had come across, where it was about how democracies handle situations of insurgency. And then there was another part of the literature review, which was about the insurgencies themselves. And like, who has written on Kashmir, what have they written, who has written on the Naga crisis, what have they written, who has written on the Khalistan movement, what have they written. So you summarize those arguments, and you summarize the interpretations, that these varying interpretations are how these conflicts have been seen and critically examined by different authors and scholars. So that's a thematic arrangement.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Is there anything else? Yeah, I just gave an example of independent and dependent variable, right? So I think that question is done. Okay. Okay, if that's all, then I think we are way past the time limit. So thank you all very much. I hope you enjoy this research methodology workshop and learn from it, and use it in your future endeavors. All the very best to all of you. I'm of course available at the departmental office. So if any of you just want to chat or discuss, you're most welcome to my room anytime. Okay. Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you,
Thank you.
ma'am.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Thank
ma'am.
you
Thank you,
all the
ma'am.
This was
listeners.
good.
Thank you,
Thank
ma'am.
you, ma'am.
Thank you.
All
Ma'am.
the best.